When will the Capitals' 2023 first round pick Ryan Leonard be able to help the Caps? I'll discuss next on this edition of Locked On Capitals.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals. I'm so glad you decided to join me today. As always, this podcast is free and available on all the major platforms, including the SiriusXM app and on YouTube. And I want to thank you for making this your first listen of the day. My name is Dan Holme. You can find me on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. And the best way that you guys can help grow the show is to head on over to YouTube and subscribe to Locked On Capitals on YouTube. In today's episode of Locked On Capitals, we talk about the Caps' first round pick, 8th overall, Ryan Leonard, and what kind of development camp he had. He is impressing, suffices to say. Even some of the youngest players, the coaches, the GM, they're all just really impressed with Ryan Leonard. We'll talk about that in the show. Then we will talk about when will he be ready to help this team. We've said that this team needs to get younger. It needs to get faster. It needs a youth infusion. When can we expect him to help this team? And then we will talk about his history and scouting report historically. What kind of player is Ryan Leonard, and what kind of player are the Capitals going to have at some point? But just to get it going here, we will talk about Leonard at development camp, which we know wasn't too long ago, and he impressed. It was good to see a lot of those younger players. There were some, saw different younger goalies and maybe some players you weren't so familiar with, some you were more familiar with. And it was a good chance to get a nice long look at some of these younger players that we've heard about. Some of them were selected in this last year's draft, the draft last month. But so it's good to see what kind of player they're on the ice. You can hear all the time that they're this kind of player or they're that kind of player. But when you see them suit up, put the jersey on, put the skates on, and, start participating in drills and mock games, that kind of thing, that is when you can see truly what kind of player you have. In this particular episode, we are going to talk about the Caps' first round pick. Ryan Leonard picked 8th overall. Yes, some people thought it was going to be Matvei Michkov. Some people thought that. Ultimately, I am happy with who the Capitals got at 8th. I know what I had said before, but the more I read about Leonard, the more I like about him. He seems to be more of the prototypical Capitals player, if that's one of the things. The athlete as a bulldog and compared to Tom Wilson by analysts during ESPN's draft night coverage. And I think the comparables is that he has a big frame. I think that he's going to grow into it a little bit. I don't think that, he's done. If we all remember Tom Wilson, when he first came to the league, he was a big body, but then he kind of grew into it. And you see the guy you have before you now, kind of a tough guy. One of the analysts was saying during the draft that this man has muscles in his face. He's mean, said one analyst. And I don't want to pigeonhole him or, characterize him already as just a tough guy. I think that he brings a lot more to the game. And as I talk about here at the development camp, he does bring that kind of play. He's a great goal scorer. He's a great skater, but adding that physicality is always a plus, and that is one of the things that we like about him. Scouts are combing the world for another Tom Wilson and Jamie Benn player. They said Leonard's most unique attribute might just be his shot and just how he can whip it off the puck fast and get it on the net. So a quick release, a good shot, and a great potential goal scorer at some point for the Caps. What is one of the things that we talked about in the show is this last season, Alex Ovechkin was doing a majority of all the goal scoring. Tom Wilson, who was in the top 3 in goals the year before, was injured. And Evgeny Kuznetsov had a hot and cold season, more of a cold season, if you will. So to have a guy in the pipeline like Ryan Leonard is a big thing. First, Leonard makes a statement with his size and strength. The 6-foot, 194-pound right wing loves to play the body, goes hard to the net, and be aggressive in puck battles. He plays an honest, hard-working game, but the biggest thing about his game is his power, was the assessment here of the Hockey News. And that is one of the things to like about it, is the physicality, but just the raw power that he brings to the game and how that is going to help the Capitals. Leonard is a powerful skater and a player who has an explosive stride and uses his strength to win battles, take good care of the puck, and generate opportunities on offense. He also plays a collected defensive game and is able to push and keep the puck out of harm's way. So not only a good offensive player, but a good player in general, responsibly. If he has the puck, he gets it out of the way. So he's almost has a good defensive flair to his game. I think there is a lot to like about Leonard's game. And that's ultimately why the Capitals picked him in the first round overall. There were other options, and I think that is what they liked about his game. There's not so many different hangups as there were on other different players. We do know, and I'll talk a little bit later in the show, that it's probably going to be a couple of years before he's ready for the team. But is there a potential that he could help out this team sooner? We'll talk about that a little bit later, but just really impressive of all the different videos and things that I saw of him at development camp, and some of the writers that were talking about him. We're just working on what he can do and working on our bodies. Strength coach is awesome, talking to us about nutrition. Leonard said the main thing is how to become a pro, honestly, he said. And that's one of the things, is how to develop your game and how to change from a college player into a professional player. The nutrition, how you can grow into be a stronger player. You can't just eat junk food. You gotta eat the right kind of calories and the right kind of protein. That is what's so key in these development camps. Leonard's special shot becomes evident immediately upon watching a mic'd up video posted by the Capitals. The prospect bends and leans into his wrister, putting his entire body into whipping the puck toward the net. It is impressive. If you guys haven't had the opportunity, go over to WashingtonCapitals.com and check out what kind of player he is. If that translates to the NHL, we're going to have one heck of a player in years to come. And that's what we're talking about. Hershey and the Stingrays, they're already well stocked with good players for the future, but the players that the Capitals got at this year's draft only adds to that in years to come. So I don't know if he's going to make a direct shot from college to the NHL, but at some point he might have to make a step through the AHL and the NHL. But at some point, Leonard is going to be one amazing player for the Capitals. Just taking a look at what he did last season, Leonard is coming off a season where he scored 51 goals in 57 games for the U18 national team. His 94 points were third most on the team. Leonard also chipped in at 20 points, 11 goals, 9 assists in 17 USHL games. The Caps draft pick ended his 22-23 season with a standout offensive performance in the U18 World Championship. Leonard blitzed the competition for 17 points, 8 goals, 9 assists in 7 games, and scored the overtime gold medal winner against Sweden. And that was one of the funny moments where they were, asking him about it. Was the moment that you got drafted by the Capitals, or the moment that you got that game-winning goal in that gold medal game against Sweden, which was more important? And he said it was that being drafted by the Capitals, and then he acquiesced and said, no, I take that back. Winning the gold medal winner was the highlight of his career thus far. And a kind of a cool thing about him is as well, he was so happy. He was so, I think just proud of where he was at. He said that he slept with his jersey on. So it suffices to say he is excited about his future in the NHL. He is excited about his future with the Capitals. Talking about who he compares himself, a lot of people are talking about his comparisons to Tom Wilson. But who does he think that he reminds himself of, or who does he try to emulate? While Leonard compared his playing style to Matthew Tkachuk, Zach Hyman, and Alex Tuch, he said he tries to emulate how Austin Matthews shoots the puck in a quick and shifty way. Matthews scored 60 goals during the 21-22 season. If the Capitals can get any kind of production, even similar to an Austin Matthews, I think that you're starting to see, the heir apparent to someone like an Alex Ovechkin, who in 3 years ostensibly is going to be hanging up the skates. So a really solid move for the Capitals at the draft. Again, there was a lot of talk about, did they pick the right player, that kind of thing. I ultimately think they did. They found a good goal scorer. They found a player that has a grittiness, toughness, but a good release. He's responsible with the puck, and he's good at taking the puck out of harm's way. So, a responsible player, and those guys aren't exactly a dime a dozen. I think that Ross Mahoney and the scouts knocked it out of the park. All right, so straight ahead, we will talk about the history and scouting report of Ryan Leonard and what kind of player is he historically. We'll talk about that straight ahead. Take your first swing at betting MLB on FanDuel and get 10 times your first bet amount in bonus bets up to $200. That's right, just bet 20 bucks and you'll land $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. That's 200 you can spend betting everything from the money line to the over under to who you think is going to get the first home run, all on an app that's safe, secure, and super easy to use. Plus, when you win, you can get paid instantly. There's no better place to bet on MLB than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So sign up today at fanduel.com/locked on to get $200 in bonus bets. That's fanduel.com/locked on. FanDuel, official partner of Major League Baseball. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure and subscribe or follow Locked On Capitals wherever you find your podcasts and on YouTube. I have a lot of great guests lined up for you this summer, and I will do player profiles of the players selected at the draft. I will do player profiles of the different players down in Hershey and when we can expect to see those players on the team and what they look to bring to their respective teams next season. All right, in this next segment here, we are going to continue talking about Ryan Leonard and what kind of player is he historically. What is the book? What is the scouting report? And what are people saying about him? It's all positive. I didn't hear any negative comments. And sometimes you will hear, this was a bad thing. That was a bad thing. So what are the other people saying? He showed why we were so pleased to get him. Capitals assistant GM Ross Mahoney said it strong, explosive. I think I said it before after the draft, his shot, it was on display. It's not only accurate, not only does he have a quick release, but he has such a heavy shot. He is very competitive. He's not afraid to take the puck to the net. He'll score goals in those tougher areas. Really, really happy with him. And those are the words of the assistant GM, Ross Mahoney, who has been involved in the draft for years. So I think the arrow is pointing up. You take that. You take Ivan Miroshnichenko, who's going to be good in years to come. This team will be one to be reckoned with. 8th overall. Let's see what he has, goaltender Chase Clark said in his mic'd up session. Second laters, he broke my glove. So suffices to say, he does have a heavy shot. He's breaking a goalie's glove shortly after he's in the game. This guy has a heater on him. The Capitals 2021 6th-round pick says, as he struggles to make saves, how is this kid an 05, these USA National Development Program kids, for only being 18? He's probably got one of the hardest shots out there. So that is what he brings to the game. That is what we can expect from Ryan Leonard on this team in years to come. As Caps fans, you should be excited about how this team is looking for years to come. As I record this in July, I don't know what kind of team we're going to have out on the ice this next season. Maybe there's going to be some big moves coming, but I'm talking about years to come. This team will be in a really good position. He disformed my glove on the first shot, Clark said, laughing in his response. It'll definitely be one of the hardest shots I ever faced. The way Ryan shoots makes it hard to track the puck, and how fast his release is, how he changes the angle. So just a dynamic player, one of the greatest players that a lot of these guys have played with. Chesley out there said again about him as well. A lot of the guys have stood out. Obviously, there's a really good number of guys. I think Ryan Leonard is one of the better ones out here. So the accolades, the accomplishments, the praise just continues to get heaped on Ryan Leonard. Again, some people talk to me when after they drafted him, they're like, well, that is how great he played in this league or that league. That's not necessarily what kind of NHL player he's going to be. I'm here to say, I think that if he continues on his current trajectory, just based on what we saw in camp, the Caps got one heck of a player. So what is the history? What is the scouting report to really just take the face off the clock and look at the gears of Ryan Leonard? Who are they getting? Leonard is dangerous with the puck in the offensive zone, possessing a pro caliber shot in hands. He is incredibly deceptive, using his upper body and eyes to turn defenders' feet and sticks before walking around them or getting a shot on net. Leonard is a great facilitator as well. After making a move, he can find guys in stride in dangerous spots. An above average skater, Leonard can employ all of these tools off the rush too, making him more versatile. That's from Elite Prospects. That is what they do. They talk about prospects. Glowing marks on him. Leonard wasn't drafted out a typical junior player in the U.S. or Canada. He is a product of the USA National Hockey Development Program, an organization started in '96 to centralize the training and development of the country's best hockey players. When not at their home base in Plymouth, Michigan, players from the USNTDP form a group and play against the USHL and NCAA teams. They also compete in international tournaments. The goal is to help players get to the next level and realize their full potential while also chemistry with other U.S. talents. So just an impressive player, and was evident even in his scouting report, even from his earliest days. But where did he get his great shot? His Ryan's brother, John Leonard, a left wing, is the veteran of 64 NHL games. He signed a 1-year, 2-way deal this summer with the Arizona Coyotes after spending last season with the Nashville Predators. So this guy has 64 games under his belt in the NHL. So that is what they practiced. And one of the things I was reading about him is that's where they worked on it, was in the basement. The basements, that's where you go downstairs when you're a kid and you shoot how many ever pucks you can, Leonard said, making your parents buy you all those stupid targets, and you're going to break a couple things here and there. I definitely threw a lot of targets down there and put a lot of holes in the wall. Hey, all things considered, his parents, if he is in the NHL and his brother is in the NHL, I would say it was well worth it. Those guys are going to be well paid and they're going to have long, successful careers in the NHL. So his brother, along with him, I think are just in a really good position. So a lot to be happy for as Caps fans. And you can kind of see, the lines, the roots of the player, where they come from. And one of the things of being successful in any sport is just starting at the youngest age. And that was no different in his case. Ryan and his brother used to play hockey a lot in the basement. And, you heard about Alex Ovechkin and the things that he did back in Russia when he was growing up. Those things which seemed insignificant as children really kind of come into focus as you get older. You saw that all that time, shooting the puck in the basement against the wall, playing against your brother, all the different other kind of things that you thought at the time as a child were pointless or a waste of time, or maybe your parents were yelling down in the basement saying, hey, you guys, keep it down there. It all came to fruition as both Ryan and his brother have jobs in the NHL. Alex Ovechkin and all the other players that you hear as young children who are taking part in these drills out in the yard, in their backyard ice rink, down in the basement. If you're a kid listening to this show and you have dreams, if you have aspirations of being an NHL player and you're involved in your junior hockey league, your pee wee league, if you're shooting the pucks in the garage or in the basement and you really like it, keep with it, because you can see where it can go. Take a look at Ryan Leonard. Take a look at his brother. Take a look at all the other players out there that were skating and getting involved in hockey at the youngest age, and look at where they are now. Sometimes it seems like a pipe dream. Sometimes it seems like something that will never happen. It's coming to reality for players like Ryan Leonard and his brother, that kind of thing. So it is an exciting thing to think about, as like a lot of these kids growing up here. Sometimes I think that you think it's all a waste of time. You'll grow out of it. If you stick with it and you have the raw talent, that's the big thing. There's a lot of kids, I suppose, that, have skates on maybe that don't have that talent. But if you have, the ability to play at that level, even as children, stick with it. You can see what it can turn out to be at some point. All right. So straight ahead, we will talk about, it's good that the Capitals selected Ryan Leonard. It's good that they selected him, but when will he be ready to help this team? We need someone to help this team right now. When can we expect his help? We'll discuss that straight ahead. All right, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So as we spoke about in the show, if you're an everydayer, you know that we talk about players and their development and when they can be ready for this team When can we expect Ryan Leonard to help this team? There's good news and there's bad news. The good news is that it could be sooner than later. The bad news is that it will not be next season. So, when can we expect Ryan to help out this team? He's slated to play next season at Boston College, where he'll join five fellow USNTDP teammates. It's really exciting, Leonard said. It's comfortable, too, that you're going out there with five other guys that you know, really happy for all of them. So, those guys that put in the hard work, it is paying off. And I'm really, proud of these guys. Sometimes people think that these guys just got lucky, that they got these NHL contracts because they were in the right place at the right time. That's not how life works out. That's not the case there. So I'm happy, but I think it's a good idea for this guy to go to college, honor his commitment, because you got to kind of ultimately plan for the future as well. Don't really know the timeline. Just want to stay patient and make the right choice. I want to have a good move for years to come here. In the meantime, Leonard said his focus will be on helping the Eagles claim a title or two. So when can we expect it? Stranger things have happened. Could it be the following year with the Capitals retooling on the fly and getting younger as Alex Ovechkin nears retirement? The team could ask Leonard to turn pro after his freshman or sophomore season, depending on where he is in his development. Again, if he continues on his current trajectory, I think that it could be sooner than later. And everything that we've seen at development camp, I know that isn't against, necessarily NHL players. There's some players that maybe have had a little bit of NHL experience. But if he continues on the path that he's on, I think that, the arrow's pointing up for him. I know that it is. And as Caps fans, you should be excited about what Ryan is going to bring to this team. Everything that I've talked about in this episode, the proof is in the pudding, as they say, and what he did at development camp. Historically, what kind of player is he? What kind of person is he? I think there's a lot to be excited about. We know that there is going to be a changing of the guards here soon. We know that Ovi and Backstrom and Oshie and all these guys at some point are going to hang up the skates. We need to start thinking about the next wave of Cap players. And you should be excited. You got Ryan Leonard, you have Chris Stahl, you have Ivan Miroshnichenko, you have Connor McMichael, Hendrix Lapierre. This team is going to be a dynamic team that is going to be one to be reckoned with in years to come. So Caps fans, don't despair that this last season didn't, go, quite the way that we wanted it to go. The arrow is pointing up in the future. I just don't know exactly how soon that's going to be. There's still a lot of questions about what the Capitals are going to do between now and the start of the season. Hopefully they make some big moves, but in particular, the future is bright. And that is, I think, the important thing to concentrate on right now is, where the Caps are in years to come, because there's some teams that are kind of sunk. They don't have a plan for winning today, and they really don't have a plan for winning tomorrow. I'm not so sure about the Capitals' plans for tomorrow, but in the future, I think it looks bright. This next season, I don't know how it's going to shake out, but I know that 2-3 years from now, this Capitals team is going to be one to be reckoned with. And as Caps fans, if you're a longtime Caps fan, that should make you happy. If you're a bandwagon jumper, then, I don't know, you might want to jump off the wagon for a season or two here. I don't know how good they're going to play. But if you are truly hashtag all caps, then I think you stick with this team. And I think that in time, they will be a force to be reckoned with in the Metro once again. All right, once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals. And are you a fan of other DC sports? Well, Locked On has got you covered. We got Locked On Nationals, Commanders, and Wizards. So no matter what major DC sport it is, Locked On has got you covered all summer long. And also, are you a fan of the NHL? I know that this is the summer. I'm wearing my Nationals jersey here as I'm representing. I am still a Nationals fan, even though they are quite deplorable this year, I'm going to say. You got to be a fan. Stick with this team and stick with the NHL, even though this is the summertime and, hockey seems like the furthest thing from your mind. They are going to be breaking down moves throughout the NHL. So follow Locked On NHL wherever you find your podcasts and on YouTube so you can get your NHL fix year round. All right. Once again, thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holney, and I'll talk to you again next time.